The Boston area is well known. You have the airport, Boston Airport, and across the harbor is the better known touristic area of the North Boston. If you walk around the harbor walk, which is very nice, you get to Charlestown. And from Charleston, you have a very nice view of the Marina and at the end, the Spalding Center. And this was a view that I particularly liked on a summer night in 2019. And that's why I decided it would be a very nice view, a challenging view, but very nice view to paint. I created this painting using water soluble oils. I use artisan Winsor Newton linseed oil as needed when the paints need to be a bit more fluid and more buttery. For the colors, I used the Lucas Berlin 20 ml set. This set comes with titanium white, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow hue, yellow ochre, vermilion hue, alizarin crimson hue, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, viridian hue, and burnt umber. I used a clear palette. It's vinyl plastic palette. And for oil painting, the palette knife is very useful for mixing. Although it's a painting knife, I rarely use it for painting. I also used it for scraping off paint. And the bristle brushes that I used were anywhere from a very large size to block very large areas of the painting to size 2 flats. Basically, I use more of the flats than filberts. And one thing I realized is that with oil paints, you need to have several of the same size because you're keeping your dark brushes and your light brushes and sometimes even color, the greens, you don't want to mix them with the reds. This doesn't happen in acrylic painting because you clean the brushes every time you change color. But with oils, you can keep the brushes with the paint. So you need a lot of the same. To begin the painting, what I did was to place the masses with ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson in different proportions, but I basically established the shapes that were catching my attention and that were the principal elements of the composition. Composition is important, and usually I work out the composition with photographs and sketches before I go on the canvas. So of the many photographs that I took, this was the one that allowed me to decide on which was the composition. I started introducing a bit of the viridian hue and a little bit of the cerulean blue with white. I started using a bit of white and continued to work on the basic masses of the areas that I wanted to fill in. Continuing on this, the nocturne views are a bit challenging because everything is basically very dark. And whereas in a landscape painting, normally the things that are farther from you are lighter in tone, in a nocturne, it appears different. The shades against the dark sunset light are getting darker and darker. So you have to work on darkening and making sure that you put the dark things first. I had made a decision of making sure that the reflections on water would be coming out. Those were really, to me, it's what caught my attention, not just the sky, but also the reflections on the water. And in here, I used a little bit more of the black to make sure that I would sort of delineate the forms. It's basically, again, masses and forms where the boats would be going. I decided I did not want to paint all the boats in the marina and I left it as an open area. I was just going to make up that area of lights and I wanted to do the reflections on the water, which you could not actually see on the photograph because there's so many boats in that marina. It's a very popular marina. And then I just used a little bit of the vermilion red for the different areas on the image that I had with the buildings reflecting the sunset light. I actually liked it a lot. I was very happy. I signed it, as you can see, and I went to bed and I realized something was not working. So I had to stop. What was wrong? There was something that was not really clicking compared to the image that I had seen. So when you put them side by side, which of course I did not have when I was painting, but nevertheless, when you put them side by side, you can see where the lightest area in the sky is. I had put it much higher. So I had to bring it down actually to the level where I had been painting the buildings. The line of the Tobin Bridge, which is, I'm going to call the horizon, although the horizon is a bit lower, but that particular line, which is a very interesting line right in the middle, was much higher in my painting than what it should be. The building of the Marina at the level of the street and the size of that building were both wrong. The size was too big, and it was placed too high. When you take that building on the marina and you walk down the pier, you get to the building of the marina at the end of the pier. That building was probably a little better in terms of the scale, but again, it was too high. So the angle of the piers and the marina, and especially where the boats should be, were completely wrong in my painting. And obviously, it was giving a very strange sensation of perspective, completely wrong. The boathouses on the very right bottom of the composition were way too big. I know that they were closer to me when I was looking at them, but they were way too big. And of course, the triangle of light on the water, which I thought was really precious and beautiful, I had made much bigger. So this is my brain's eye, and my brain was actually not allowing me to see with my eyes, but conceptualizing and making things completely wrong. So I would say everything was wrong with this picture. So now there's a warning. The next slides could be not appropriate for the faint of heart. Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. This is a quote from Piet Mondrian, and I decided I did not want to keep any of my mistakes. So I scraped everything with a palette knife. I have to tell you, the Burning Lucas water mixable oils were really hard to scrape. I actually also used a rag with water and really tried to clean it. I probably could have used a new canvas. No idea why I didn't. Probably stubbornness. And then I used an oil pastel stick to place the key elements I showed before on the canvas so that I knew where the different elements should be. The next thing I did was to decide to work on a tonal element for masses. So I did the second painting, I would say, using Winsor Newton artisan water mixable oils. I like the way they handle. I've been using the Lucas Berlin for less time. I've been using the artisan for a longer time, and I really like the way they handle. So I went back to using the artisan water mixable oils. And for this particular stage, I used a tonal value sketch. So this was basically, I decided not to do line drawing, but just basically masses. This is burnt umber and titanium white in different concentrations on a string in the palette, and I would just be using from one extreme, the darkest one, to the other, the lightest one, which is probably almost pure titanium white, and placing blotches of masses of paint and establishing more or less where the different elements, key elements of the composition had to be. I continued using this tonal value drawing. As you can see now, the two buildings at the beginning and at the end of the pier are roughly placed in the right position. The other buildings on the street are also placed. And I did decide it was foolish of me to try to make a different marina. There were boats, and I wanted to make sure that the elements of the marina were there. It's a busy marina, but trying to invent reflections where they were not, trying to change angles that are not there was causing trouble. And also, I decided I did not like the boathouses on the right bottom of the composition. They are, I mean, I know they're boathouses because I see them on the pier, but they just looked odd. They looked out of place. If they had been regular boats, they would have probably made more sense. So I decided to get rid of them altogether. On this next stage, I start introducing some of the local color. Basically, was alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, and the greenish tone that you see there was using a bit of the burnt umber. So I maintained the burnt umber string, tonal string, and I was using the different colors to mix with them, and especially for the clouds and the reflections, start introducing some of the local color. Again, I did open that area on the right. I did darken the area of the buildings, although I could still see the structures I was using. This is a nocturne and they should be darker. But I did realize that the clouds were probably, in terms of the tone, still a bit too dark and they should be more blue. So I wanted to start introducing the blue. And I was working on the sky and the reflections at the same time with the same color mixes. In this stage, I continued using the same the same colors, but I did introduce the cadmium yellow, and I did refine just basically with shapes, and as you can see, exactly the same color and tone for the boats, and make sure that it gave the impression of boats on the water. The reflection on the pier was there, but I exaggerated it a little bit on the bottom left. I feel that it brings the narrative with a type of an S. And I also made the vertical wall on the pier that goes from one of the pier houses and on the street to the end of the pier, that other marina house. I wanted to make sure that that looked like it's higher than the boats below. It gives a little bit more structure to the painting. And I worked, a lot on the houses in the back. They're in the shade, but I thought it was important to place some of the structural architectural elements to make sure that we understand better what's happening. I actually redefined the on the bottom left that light that is reflecting on the pier, and I made that little pier connection from one to the other end. The boats go actually around it, and I wanted to make sure that it showed, at least it has some element of understanding what we are seeing. I worked a little bit more on the boats and the different buildings. This is the final rendition when I say I turn the lights on. What I did here was the elements of the lights. It's a nocturne, and those were important, but placing them at the end is the best. Cadmium red is key. It gives you the idea of that transparency, even in the marina house on the street. The lights are on the first floor, but the cadmium reflection on the windows in the second floor is just a hint of it, but it gives the impression, and also on the floor. I exaggerated those a little bit and changed from what I was seeing, but in real life, I mean, the photo helps, but I was seeing this in real life when I first started this painting, and these colors really bring this to life. I hope you like it, and I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel and enjoy some more of my videos. Thank you very much for watching.